Christmas morning, snow falling soft and silent outside, the smell of pine and cinnamon in the air. And the one person you love most in the world looks at the gift you poured your soul into and says, cold as ice, it's trash. My name is Robert. I'm 52, a widower, a father, and right now I'm sitting alone in the same Ohio house where every memory of my family was made. If the very first seconds of this story already hurt, stay with me. Because what comes next will shake you even harder. 5 years ago, cancer took my wife Elena. She fought for 18 months, and when she was gone, the house turned into a museum of quiet. Our only daughter, Sarah, was already living in the city by then, building her design career, visiting less and less. I told myself it was normal. Kids grow up. Life moves on. But Christmas has always been sacred to us. So last year I decided to give Sarah something that wasn't just a gift. It was a piece of her mother's heart. Up in the attic, I'd kept a painting Elena bought at a flea market the first year we were married. She paid $20 for it, laughed and said, "It looks like joy exploded on canvas." Swirls of cobalt, gold, and crimson that seemed to move when you stared long enough. After Elena passed, I wrapped it in cloth and hid it away, waiting for the right moment. That moment, I thought, was Christmas 2024. I spent weeks restoring it myself. Gentle cleaning, new stretcher bars, a simple oak frame I built with my own hands. Every evening I worked by lamplight, talking to Eleanor as if she was sitting beside me. I imagined Sarah's face when she saw it. Tears, a hug, maybe the first real conversation we'd had in years. Christmas morning came. Sarah arrived late, cheeks pink from the cold, scrolling her phone before she even took off her coat. We did the small gifts first, socks, a scarf I knitted, the usual. Then I carried in the painting, wrapped in brown paper and red ribbon. "This one's special," I said, voice already shaking. "From Mom and me." She tore the paper. For one heartbeat, the room was silent. Then her nose wrinkled. She turned the canvas sideways, then upside down like she was looking for a brand label. "Dad, seriously? It's kind of trash, like something from a motel in the 80s. She actually laughed, short and sharp. "Thanks, I guess, but my apartment is minimalist. This would ruin the vibe." I stood there holding the frame, feeling every year of my age. "Sweetheart, your mom loved this piece. Mom had questionable taste sometimes," she cut in, already reaching for her coffee. "It's fine, Dad. Really. Just keep it." She left it leaning against the wall like an unwanted umbrella and went back to texting. I told myself she was stressed. City life had hardened her. She didn't sleep that night. At 2 a.m. I carried the painting to my study, turned on the bright lamp, and really looked at it for the first time in years. That's when I saw the signature hiding beneath a veil of dust, E. Moreau, a name I'd never heard Elena mention. A name that, when I typed it into my phone with shaking fingers, made my heart stop. Because Etienne Moreau didn't just paint pictures. He painted masterpieces that vanished half a century ago, and people were still searching for them. How could the painting my wife bought for $20 at a yard sale be worth a fortune? And why did my daughter look at it like she already knew? What if the gift your child just called trash was actually worth more than every paycheck you've earned in 20 years? That single thought kept me awake until the sky outside turned the color of ash. The Christmas tree lights blinking like they're trying to warn me about something. After Sarah drove away, tires spitting slush, painting left behind like a forgotten grocery bag, I carried the canvas into my workshop. I told myself I was only going to clean it properly, give it the respect my daughter wouldn't. Under the bright work lamp, the colors glowed like they were alive, and there in the lower right corner, almost invisible under 50 years of grime, was that tiny signature again, E. Moreau. I'd never heard Elena say the name, not once. She'd always called it that silly flea market thing. She'd hung it in the laundry room, for heaven's sake, where nobody but the washing machine ever saw it. I wiped the surface with a soft cloth and a little distilled water. The more grime came off, the more the painting seemed to breathe. The brushstrokes were confident, almost arrogant. Nothing like the timid weekend artist work I'd assumed it was. At 3 a.m., coffee long cold beside me, I opened my laptop and typed the name. Etienne Moreau, French, born 1932, disappeared 1968. Only 27 confirmed paintings. Last known sale, $178,000 in 2019. Several works still listed as whereabouts unknown on every major art loss registry. My pulse hammered so hard I could hear it. I scrolled further. One grainy black and white photo showed a younger Elena, early 20s, hair in a ponytail, standing in front of a Paris street market. Behind her, half out of frame, was a folding table covered in canvases, and on the edge of that table, the exact same swirl of cobalt and gold. The photo credit read, Elena Marie Harlan, Summer Abroad, 1996. The year before we met. The year she supposedly bought the painting for $20 because it made her smile. I sat back so hard the chair groaned. If this was real, Elena had lied to me for our entire marriage. Not a big lie, just a quiet, gentle one she carried for 28 years. And now Sarah had looked at that same painting, called it trash, and walked away without a flicker of surprise. I closed the laptop, heart racing with a feeling I couldn't name yet, half wonder, half dread. The next morning, I wrapped the canvas in acid-free tissue, slid it into a cardboard portfolio, and drove to the only person I trusted who knew anything about art. Margaret, my late wife's closest friend from church, retired gallery director. She opened her door in her robe, took one look at my face and stepped aside without a word. When I unwrapped the painting on her dining table, she went perfectly still. "Robert," she whispered, "please tell me you didn't clean this yourself." I was gentle. She was already reaching for her magnifying loupe. 10 minutes later she sat down hard, hand pressed to her chest. "This isn't a copy, this is the real thing. I'd bet my reputation on it." She looked up at me, eyes shining with something between joy and fear. "But if it is, then Elena knew, and someone else might know too." She didn't have to say the rest, because the question now burning a hole through me was simple and terrifying. If my wife hid the truth from me for almost 3 decades, what else did she hide? And why did my own daughter seem so desperate for me never to find out? What if the woman you loved for 30 years looked into your eyes every single day and lied about the one thing that could have changed both your lives? I drove to Chicago with the painting locked in the trunk and my stomach in knots. Dr. Harlan Whitcomb's office smelled of old books and coffee. He wore white gloves and didn't speak for almost an hour. He just moved the canvas from light to light, took microscopic samples, ran ultraviolet and infrared scans. I didn't understand. When he finally took off his glasses, his face was pale. "Mr. Harlan, this is an undocumented Etienne Moreau, painted 1964, lost since 1968. The signature, the pigments, the canvas weave, everything is correct. At public auction today, this would conservatively fetch between $95,000 and $120,000. The numbers floated past me like foreign words. All I could hear was Sarah's voice on Christmas morning. "It's trash." Dr. Whitcomb turned the painting over. On the back stretcher, almost erased by time, was a pencil dedication. "To my son and my storm, E." That was Elena's private nickname for me. She whispered it the night Sarah was born. She whispered it the night the cancer came back. I had to sit down. There was more. Under the brown paper backing, barely visible, someone had tucked a modern yellow post-it. The adhesive had dried, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Sarah's neat, looping cursive. "Do not let Dad know yet. Wait until after the estate is settled." My knees almost gave out. Dr. Whitcomb pretended not to notice my reaction. He simply asked if I wanted formal certification and a letter of authenticity that would stand up in any court or auction house. I told him yes. Then I asked the question that was clawing at my throat. How hard would it be for someone to sell this painting quietly, without the owner ever knowing? He met my eyes for the first time. "Disturbingly easy," he said softly, "if the owner trusts the wrong person." I drove home in silence, snow starting to fall again. Every mile I kept seeing Sarah's face when she unwrapped the canvas. The way her eyes flicked to the corner where the signature hides, the tiny, satisfied curl at the edge of her mouth when she thought I wasn't looking. She hadn't been surprised. She'd been disappointed I didn't die sooner. By the time I pulled into my driveway, a new feeling had settled in my chest, cold, heavy, and sharp. It wasn't just grief anymore. It was the beginning of something darker. Because if my daughter was willing to wait for my death to cash in on her mother's secret, what would she do when she found out I already knew? What if you discovered your child had been counting the days until you were gone, not out of grief, but out of greed? I didn't sleep after Chicago. I sat in the dark living room with the painting propped on the coffee table, lit only by the blue glow of the streetlight through the curtains. It looked alive, almost watching me back. At 2:14 a.m., I did the thing I swore I would never do. I opened Sarah's old MacBook she'd left behind last summer, the one she called Slow Junk. Password still the same. Buddy 2000, our golden retriever who died when she was 12. The folder was hidden inside another folder inside the trash, never fully emptied. Name, After. I clicked it with the same feeling you get touching a hot stove, knowing it will burn. Inside were screenshots, emails, PDFs, a chain with a man named Julian Carver. Private art acquisitions, Dubai, London. Subject lines like Moreau timeline, clean transfer, payout structure. One email from Sarah dated 3 weeks before Christmas. He's talking about gifting it to me this year. If he does, I'll drive it straight to you. If he keeps it, we wait until probate. Either way, he has no idea. Mom made sure of that. Another screenshot. Her notes app. Mom's instructions, spoken the week she went into hospice. Never tell Dad the real value until he can't fight it. Split 50-50 with me after estate taxes. She said he'd give it away to charity or burn it in a fit if he knew. She cried when she told me. Said it was the only way to protect my future from his stubborn pride. I read that line 6 times. Protect my future from his stubborn pride. The final file was a scanned handwritten letter in Elena's shaky script, dated 4 days before she died. Sarah dear, if you're reading this, I'm gone. The painting is yours by right. Your father is a good man, but he would never let us sell it. He still thinks money corrupts. Use it to buy the life we couldn't give you. Forgive me for the lie. Love, Mom. I closed the laptop and walked to the bathroom. I didn't turn on the light. I just sat on the cold tile floor and cried without sound until my ribs hurt. When the sun came up, I looked 10 years older in the mirror. I made coffee I didn't drink. I wrapped the painting again, gentler this time, like it was wounded. Then I did the only thing that felt sane. I called the auction house in New York Dr. Whitcomb had recommended, the one that handles sensitive family consignments. I told them I wanted a binding contract, full transparency, and every penny going to a trust accounts I control, not my estate. The director asked, "Are you certain you want to proceed without informing other family members?" I thought of Sarah's calm, practiced smile on Christmas morning. I thought of Elena whispering secrets to our daughter, while I slept in the hallway chair outside the hospice room. "Yes," I said. "I'm certain." As I hung up, my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Hey Dad," random thought, "did you ever get rid of that ugly painting? My friend is doing a bad art party and it would be hilarious." I stared at the screen until it went dark. And in that moment, something inside me quietly died, the part that still believed blood makes you family. Because the girl who sent that text wasn't my daughter anymore. She was a stranger wearing my little girl's face. And strangers don't get to win. But how far was she willing to go now that the painting was slipping from her grasp? That question kept me awake for the next 3 nights straight. What if the person who betrayed you walked through your door again, all hugs and apologies, while quietly planning to finish what she started? 3 weeks after I found the hidden folder, Sarah showed up unannounced on a Saturday morning. The doorbell rang while I was making toast. I opened it and there she stood in the February cold, cheeks pink, holding a white bakery box and a shy smile. "Peace offering," she said, lifting the box. "Cinnamon rolls from that place downtown you love. I was a jerk at Christmas, Dad. Can I come in?" My stomach turned to ice, but I let her in. She moved through the house like nothing had changed, kicked off her boots, hung her coat on the same hook she'd used since middle school, kissed my cheek with the same scent of vanilla and city air. She even hummed the little tune she made up when she was 6. We sat at the kitchen table. She unwrapped the rolls, steam curling between us. "I've been thinking about you a lot," she said, eyes soft. "Work's been insane, but that's no excuse. I was cold about Mom's painting. I'd love to have it now, actually. It would feel like having a piece of her in my apartment." I sipped my coffee so I wouldn't have to answer right away. The painting was no longer in the house. 2 days earlier, a bonded courier from the New York auction house had taken it away in a climate-controlled van. It was already catalogued, insured for $150,000, and scheduled for private preview in 4 weeks. But Sarah didn't know that. I set my mug down carefully. "It meant a lot to your mom," I said. "I've been thinking about it too." Her eyes lit up, just a flicker, then softened again. "I was stupid and stressed, I see that now. If it's still in the attic, I'll take it today. I even brought bubble wrap in the car." She laughed, light and familiar, and for one heartbeat, I almost believed the old Sarah was back. Then she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You've been alone too long, Dad. Let me take something off your plate. Let me take care of this one thing." Her fingers were warm. Her smile was perfect. And in that moment I felt something I never thought I could feel for my own child. Fear. Because her touch felt calculated. Because she hadn't asked where the painting was. She'd assumed it was still gathering dust upstairs. I pulled my hand away gently and stood up. "Actually, honey, I gave it away." The air changed. Her smile froze halfway. "Gave it away?" she repeated, voice suddenly thin. "To who?" "A local art program for kids. They restore old pieces and sell them to fund scholarships. It felt right. Your mom would have liked that." The color drained from her face. For the first time in her life, Sarah looked at me like I was a stranger. "You gave it away," she whispered. "For nothing." I nodded slowly. "It wasn't about money. It was about love." She stood up so fast the chair scraped the floor. "That was Mom's, that was—" She caught herself, took a breath, forced the smile back. "I mean, wow. Okay. That's really generous, Dad. Really." But her hands were shaking as she grabbed her coat. At the door, she hugged me stiffly. "I'll call you later," she said into my shoulder, voice cracking just enough to sound real. The second her car pulled out, I locked the door, leaned against it, and exhaled for what felt like the first time in minutes. My phone buzzed 20 minutes later. A text from an unknown number. "Change of plans, need the painting back ASAP. Name your price, cash, no questions." Then 30 seconds after that, another text, this time from Sarah. "Forget I came by, I'm not feeling well, talk soon." I stared at both messages side by side. She was panicking, and someone else was already in motion. The auction preview was still weeks away, but the game had just accelerated. Because if Sarah was desperate enough to fake tears and cinnamon rolls, how far would the people behind her go when they realized the painting was gone for good? What if the people your daughter sold you out to decided you were now the only thing standing between them and a fortune? 3 nights after Sarah's fake apology visit, the doorbell rang at 12:47 a.m. I was still awake, sitting in the dark with a cup of tea, gone cold chamomile, watching the street through the curtains, like a man waiting for a storm. The porch light showed a tall man in a charcoal overcoat, expensive shoes, leather gloves, no hat even though it was below freezing. He looked like he belonged in a boardroom, not on my cracked front step in Ohio. I didn't open the door. I watched through the peephole. He rang again. Then he spoke through the wood, voice calm and polite, with a faint accent I couldn't place. "Mr. Harlan, my name is Julian Carver. I believe we have a mutual interest in a certain painting. May I come in? It's rather cold." My blood turned to slush. I stayed silent. He waited a full minute, then slipped something under the door, a plain white envelope. When his taillights disappeared, I picked it up with a tissue like it might bite. Inside was a single photograph, the Moreau taken in my own living room, time-stamped the morning after Christmas. On the back typed, $200,000 cash. 48 hours. Deliver the painting to the address below. No police, no auction house. Your daughter's safety depends on your cooperation. My hands shook so badly the photo fluttered to the floor. I called Sarah immediately, straight to voicemail. I texted, "Call me, now, urgent." Nothing. At 4 a.m. I drove to the address on the back of the photo, an empty warehouse 20 minutes away, the kind of place teenagers tag and trucks abandon. It was dark, gates chained, no cars, just a new padlock and a security camera pointed straight at the entrance. I went home and sat at the kitchen table until sunrise, the envelope in front of me like evidence. At 7:12 a.m., Sarah finally texted back. Her message was short. "I'm fine, stop being dramatic, just give them what they want, Dad, it's only a painting." Only a painting. I stared at those 4 words until they blurred. Then I did something I never imagined I'd do. I called the auction house in New York and asked to move the sale forward immediately. No previews, no press, closed bidding, highest offer wins within 7 days. They warned me the price could suffer without proper marketing. I told them I didn't care about maximizing dollars anymore. I cared about ending this before someone got hurt. The director paused, then said quietly, "Mr. Harlan, are you in danger?" I told him the truth. I think my daughter already put me in danger the day she decided I was worth more dead than alive. He didn't argue. He simply said, "We'll list it tomorrow, discreetly, ironclad security." I hung up and stared at the envelope again. $200,000 in cash sounded like a lot, until you realized it was the price of silence, and maybe the price of a life, because Julian Carver hadn't come alone that night. There had been a second man in the shadows across the street, watching the house, watching me watch him. And as the sun came up pale and weak over the snow, I understood something with perfect, terrible clarity. The painting wasn't the real treasure anymore. I was the loose end they needed tied, and loose ends have a way of disappearing. What if the only way to save yourself was to destroy the last photograph of the little girl who used to call you Daddy with her whole heart? The next morning, I did the hardest thing I've ever done in 52 years on this earth. I called the police. Not 911, a detective I'd known since Sarah's kindergarten days, Mike Brennan. He'd come to every birthday barbecue, taught her how to throw a softball, cried with us at Elena's funeral. If anyone would listen without judging too fast, it was Mike. We met in a diner outside town, the kind with cracked red booths and waitresses who still call you hon. I slid the envelope across the table, the midnight photo, the threat about Sarah's safety, the warehouse address. Mike's face went through stages, confusion, then anger, then something close to heartbreak. "Rob, you're saying Sarah's involved with these people?" I couldn't speak. I just nodded. He read every text screenshot I'd saved, every email, the scanned hospice letter from Elena. When he finished, he rubbed his eyes like a man trying to wake from a bad dream. "I can't arrest her on this," he said quietly. "Not yet, but I can open an investigation, get a warrant for her phone records, put a marked car on your street patrol past your house." I told him about the auction moving forward. He whistled low. "That'll make them panic. Panic makes people sloppy, but it also makes them dangerous." He reached across and gripped my forearm. "Listen to me. You do not open your door to anyone. You do not answer unknown numbers. You stay alive until this painting is sold and the money is in an account only you control. After that, we'll have leverage." I laughed, a dry, broken sound. "Leverage for what? Prosecuting my own daughter?" Mike didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, "Sometimes love means letting the law do what your heart can't." That afternoon, I packed a small overnight bag and moved into the guest room of Margaret's house. She didn't ask many questions. She just made up the bed, brewed chamomile, and sat with me while I stared at the wall. At 9:18 p.m., my phone rang. Private number. I almost let it go to voicemail, then I answered. It was Sarah. She was crying so hard I barely understood her at first. "Daddy, please, they took my phone. They made me send those texts. They're holding me until you bring the painting. They say if you go to the police, they'll—" Her voice cut off. A man's calm voice came on the line. Julian Carver. "Mr. Harlan, your daughter is safe for now. She's simply be motivated to help us close this amicably. You have until tomorrow night. Same warehouse, come alone with the painting. You'll leave with Sarah and $200,000 in cash, Everybody wins. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles went white. "She's my daughter," I said. "If you hurt her, you'll what?" he interrupted, almost gentle. "You'll what? You're a grieving widower with a bad knee and a 30-year-old pickup truck. We both know how this ends if you keep resisting." The line went dead. I sat frozen, Margaret's hallway clock ticking like a bomb. 10 minutes later, the auction house called. A collector in Geneva had just placed a blind bid, $340,000, highest offer by a mile. They needed my final approval to accept and close the sale in 48 hours. I stared at the guest room wall, at a faded photo of Sarah at 6 years old, gap-toothed, arms around my neck. I thought of Elena's hospice letter. "Forgive me for the lie." I thought of the stranger wearing my daughter's face, and for the first time in my life I chose me. I told the auction house, "Accept the bid. Wire every penny to the new trust. Title transfers immediately." Then I called Detective Brennan and told him everything that had just happened, because blood may be thicker than water. But sometimes the only way to stop the bleeding is to cut the wound open yourself. And tomorrow night, when they open that warehouse door, expecting a broken old man carrying a canvas, they're going to find something else entirely. What if the last time you ever saw your daughter was through the wrong end of a lie? The warehouse sat on the edge of town like a forgotten tooth, black windows, rusted walls, snow drifting against the loading dock. I pulled in at 11:57 p.m. exactly, headlights off, engine ticking as it cooled. In the passenger seat lay a wrapped package the same size and weight as the Moreau, but inside was only blank canvas and old newspapers. The real painting was already on a plane to Geneva. I stepped out into the cold. The air smelled of iron and diesel. 2 men appeared from the shadows, one with a flashlight under his chin like a bad horror movie. The taller one was Julian Carver, coat collar turned up, calm smile in place. "Mr. Harlan, right on time. I admire punctuality. Where's Sarah?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. Carver tilted his head. A side door creaked open, and Sarah stumbled out, hands zip-tied in front of her, tears frozen on her cheeks. She looked small, younger than I'd seen her in years. "Dad," she started. Carver raised a gloved finger and she went silent. "Painting first," he said. I lifted the fake package. "Let her walk to me, halfway, then we trade." He considered it, then nodded. Sarah took shaky steps across the oil-stained concrete. When she was 10 feet away, Carver's man grabbed the package from my arms, slit the wrapping with a box cutter, and froze. Newspaper fluttered out like dead leaves. Carver's vanished smile, was the most beautiful thing I'd seen in weeks. At that exact second, floodlights exploded across the lot. The 6 unmarked SUVs roared in from every direction, red and blue strobes hidden until the last moment. "Police! Hands in the air! Down on the ground!" Carver spun, reaching inside his coat. A single shot cracked, not at him, just into the air. He dropped to his knees, palms up, face pale with the realization that the game was over. Sarah screamed as officers swarmed her. For one heartbeat, I thought she was terrified for her life. Then I was wrong. She was screaming at me. "You sold it? You actually sold Mum's painting, and how could you?" Not, "Thank God you're safe," not, "I'm sorry," just rage that the money was gone. Detective Brennan cuffed Carver himself, reading him his rights in a low, satisfied voice. Sarah was placed in the back of a separate cruiser, still sobbing, still furious. I stood in the snow and watched them drive my daughter away in handcuffs. Brennan walked over, breath fogging. "You okay, Rob?" I looked at the empty space where the fake painting had been. "I will be," I said, because in that moment under the harsh floodlights I finally understood the truth Elena never told me, and Sarah never learned. Some things are worth more than money. Some betrayals cut so deep, the only way to heal is to let the wound scar over, hard and clean. As the cruisers disappeared down the road, I felt the weight lift, not all of it, but enough to breathe. The painting was gone. The danger was over, and the little girl who once believed her daddy hung the moon, she was gone too. But I was still here, and for the first time in years I was free. What if the person who hurt you the most finally said, "I'm sorry," but only after they realized you no longer needed to hear it? 6 weeks after the warehouse, on a grey April morning, a letter came. Handwritten envelope, no return address, postmarked from the Women's Correctional Facility 2 hours north. I almost threw it away unopened. Instead, I carried it to the kitchen table, made coffee I didn't drink, and slit the seal with the same knife I once used to cut Sarah's birthday cakes. 8 pages, front and back, in her familiar looping cursive. Dad, they gave us a class here called Victim Impact. We have to write to the person we hurt most. I fought it for weeks. Then last night I dreamed you were standing in the warehouse again, and I couldn't reach you. I woke up crying so hard the guard checked on me. So here it is. The truth. All of it. Mom told me about the painting was valuable when I was 19. She was already sick, terrified we'd lose the house to medical bills. She made me promise to protect it until you were ready. She said you'd give everything away if you knew, that you always put others first, even when it broke you. She cried the whole time she explained. I think she hated herself for the secret. I kept that promise for years. Then the debt started. Credit cards, student loans, rent in the city. Julian Carver found me online. He follows art forums. He offered a lifeline. All I had to do was wait. Christmas was supposed to be simple. Take the painting, say thank you, disappear. When you said you were keeping it, something snapped. I told myself I deserved it. Mom wanted me to have it. I told myself you'd never miss what you didn't know you had value. I was wrong about everything. I hate that it took handcuffs and a jail jumpsuit to see you clearly. I hate that I let strangers use me. I hate that the last real memory you have of your daughter is me screaming about money while police lights flashed. They say I'll be here 18 to 36 months, depending on the judge. I'm not asking you to visit. I'm not asking forgiveness. I just needed you to know I finally understand what I stole wasn't a painting. It was the man who taught me family meant showing up no matter what. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry I became someone you had to protect yourself from. If you burn this letter, I'll understand. If you never write back, I'll understand that too. Sarah. I read it 3 times. Then I folded it, slid it back into the envelope and walked to the mantel where Elena's photo still smiled in its silver frame. For the first time in months, I spoke out loud to my wife. You thought you were protecting her future. You only taught her how to sell her soul. I took the letter to the backyard, to the fire pit where we used to roast marshmallows on summer nights. I held a match under the corner and watched the pages curl, blacken, lift away like dark snow. When the last ash settled, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not rage, not even sadness anymore, just a deep, exhausted peace. Because some apologies arrive too late to heal the person they're meant for. And exactly on time to free them. The money from the sale, $412,000 after fees, was already in a trust for children's art scholarships in Elena's name. I kept nothing. I needed nothing. And for the house finally stopped feeling like a museum of ghosts. Because the loudest silence of all was the one where my daughter's voice no longer lived. What if the final hammer fall of an auction gavel sounded exactly like a heart-locking forever? The sale was held on a Tuesday in May, behind the closed doors of a private salon in Manhattan. No live audience, no cameras, just a handful of collectors on encrypted phone lines, and one bidder in Geneva who never once spoke, only typed. I watched it on a secure video link from Margaret's living room, a cup of tea cooling in my hands. The auctioneer's voice was calm, almost bored. Lot 47, Etienne Moreau, untitled, 1964. Provenance fully documented. Bidding opens at $200,000. The numbers climbed so fast the screen blurred. 250, 300, 350. 400,000 came and went like a heartbeat. At 412,000, the Geneva bidder typed a single word. Done. The gavel fell with a soft wooden click that somehow echoed through my entire body. It was over. The painting my wife hid, my daughter tried to steal, the strangers tried to take by force, was gone forever. Shipped that same night to a climate-controlled vault in Switzerland, soon to hang in a home I would never see. The auction house wired the money within hours. I signed the transfer papers that sent every cent to the Elena Marie Harlan Art Foundation, a scholarship fund for kids who can't afford paintbrushes, never mind lessons. The director asked one last time, "Are you certain you want 0 held back for yourself?" I thought of Sarah's letter turning to ash in the fire pit. I thought of Elena's tired smile in the hospice bed. I thought of the empty space on my living room wall where the painting used to lean. "Yes," I said, "I've never been more certain of anything." 2 weeks later, a final envelope arrived. This one from the prison, stamped "Return to Sender" in red ink. Inside was a single Polaroid taken in the visiting room. Sarah, thinner, hair pulled back, orange jumpsuit too big for her frame. She was holding a small handwritten sign that read, "I understand now. Thank you for choosing them over me. I'm proud the kids will have brushes because of Mom's painting. I love you. I'm sorry. Sarah." On the back, she had drawn a tiny, childlike sun and a storm cloud side by side, the way she used to when she was 7. I stood in the post office parking lot for a long time, picture in my hand, wind tugging at the edges. Then I walked to the outdoor trash can, tore the photo in half, then quarters, then eighths, and let the pieces scatter like confetti no one would ever celebrate. Because some chapters have to be shredded so completely that even memory can't tape them back together. That night, I took down every photograph of Sarah from the walls, not in anger, in mercy. I boxed them gently, labeled the box "Someday," and slid it to the back of the attic, next to the empty spot where the painting once waited 30 years. Then I opened the front door, stepped onto the porch, and breathed in the warm May air that smelled like cut grass and second chances. The house was quiet, but for the first time it didn't feel empty. It felt finished. And somewhere across an ocean, a lost masterpiece now hung in the light it was always meant for. While here in a small Ohio town, an old carpenter finally learned how to let go of ghosts and how to keep walking with nothing in his hands but the rest of his life. What if the quietest year of your life turned out to be the loudest healing you ever heard? Summer came soft and slow. I sold the big family house on Maple Street, the one with the creaking third stair, and Elena's rose garden gone wild. A young couple bought it, expecting their first baby. They walked through the rooms holding hands, already planning paint colors. I signed the papers without looking back. With the proceeds, I bought a small cabin 20 minutes outside town, 2 bedrooms, wide porch, nothing fancy, but the windows face east, so the sunrise pours in like forgiveness every morning. I kept only 3 things from the old life. Helena's worn Bible with the pressed violets inside, my carpentry tools, and the empty oak frame I'd built for the painting "The Christmas Everything Broke." That frame now hangs above the fireplace, holding nothing but light and shadow. People ask why I didn't fill it. I tell them the empty space is the point. The Elena Marie Harlan Art Foundation grew faster than anyone predicted. By fall, we'd awarded 32 full scholarships. Kids who'd never touched real oil paint suddenly had canvases, brushes, teachers who believed in them. Every thank you card they sent went straight onto my refrigerator, until the door looked like a patchwork quilt of crayon suns and watercolor hearts. I started visiting the prison once a month, not for Sarah, but for a restorative justice program they were testing. I sat in a circle with other offenders and told my story. No names, just the bones of it. Love, secrets, betrayal, consequences. Afterward, a boy who'd robbed his own grandmother cried in my arms. I realized telling the truth out loud was stitching something closed inside me. Sarah never signed up for the program. She never asked to see me. I heard through the grapevine she'd started leading an art therapy group for the other women, teaching them to paint the feelings they couldn't say. The counselor told me her waiting list is long. I smiled when I heard it, a small, private smile, and kept walking. One October afternoon, I drove to the cemetery with a simple bunch of grocery store daisies. Elena's stone was warm from the sun. I sat cross-legged in the grass like we used to picnic. "I hope you can see the kids painting," I said out loud. "I hope you understand why I had to let it go." I think in the end we both kept the wrong secret for too long. The wind moved through the trees like a gentle yes. On the way home, I stopped at the little community center where the foundation holds Saturday classes. A 10-year-old girl with braids and paint on her elbows ran up and hugged my knees. "Mr. Robert, I finished the sky you showed me. Come see." She dragged me to her easel after easel until we reached hers, swirling cobalt and gold, almost exactly like the lost Moreau, but brighter, freer, alive with a child's fearless joy. I had to turn away for a second so she wouldn't see the tears. That night, sitting on my new porch with crickets singing and the only soundtrack I needed, I finally understood the real value of the painting. It was never the canvas. It was never the money. It was the moment I chose to turn someone else's hidden treasure into 32 open futures, and in doing so, I bought back my own. The frame above my fireplace stays empty. Some spaces are meant to stay open, so light can keep pouring through. And every sunrise that fills it reminds me, I gave my daughter a painting for Christmas. She called it trash. I let it go for $412,000. And somehow, in the end, I got back everything that mattered. What if the one person you swore you'd never see again asked to stand in the empty frame you'd left on your wall? It arrived on a Thursday in early December, 1 year to the day since that ruined Christmas. Plain white envelope, prison postmark, my name and address written in the same careful cursive I once knew by heart. Inside was a single card, thick cream stock, the kind used for weddings or graduations. You are cordially invited to the first annual Elena Marie Harlan Art Scholarship Exhibition, Saturday, December 20th, 6 p.m. State Women's Correctional Facility, Arts Building. At the bottom, handwritten, Dad, the kids voted. They want the man who made this possible to cut the ribbon. I won't be on stage. I'll be in the back row, in grey, not orange anymore. Early release for good behavior and program leadership. You don't have to come. But the frame on your wall is still empty. Maybe it's time to put something new in it. No pressure, just love, Sarah. I read it standing in the doorway, snowflakes melting on my shoulders. Then I read it again, sitting at the kitchen table. Then again on the porch until the ink started to blur. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I called Margaret. She listened without interrupting, then said the same thing she'd said the night I found the hidden folder. Grace isn't weakness, Robert. It's the strongest thing a heart can do. I hung up and stared at the empty frame above the fireplace for a long time. Saturday came cold and clear. I wore the same dark coat I'd worn to Elena's funeral, the one Sarah once said made me look like a gentle bear. I drove the 2 hours with the radio off, rehearsing every possible version of the moment I might see her. The prison arts building was brighter than I expected. Windows washed, fairy lights strung, children's artwork covering every wall like a wild garden. 32 scholarship recipients ages 8 to 17 stood proudly beside their paintings, eyes shining. A banner stretched across the back, in memory of Elena Marie Harlan, who believed every child deserves color. I was halfway down the aisle when I saw her. Sarah stood near the punch table in a simple grey sweater, hair longer, face thinner, but the same eyes. She was helping a little boy tie his shoelace. When she looked up and saw me, her hands froze mid-bow. For a second, the room disappeared. Then she stood slowly, wiped her palms on her jeans the way she did when she was nervous at 8 years old, and walked toward me. We stopped 2 feet apart. "Hi, Dad," she whispered. "Hi, kiddo." Her chin trembled. "I didn't think you'd come." I almost didn't. She nodded like that was fair. Then she stepped aside and gestured toward the front where a red ribbon waited, and 32 children watched me with huge, hopeful eyes. "They're waiting for you," she said. I cut the ribbon. The kids cheered. Cameras flashed. Someone handed me a pair of oversized scissors and a microphone, but I only said 6 words. "This is what love looks like." Afterward, the children swarmed me for hugs. Sarah stayed back, letting me have the moment. When the crowd thinned, she approached again, holding a small, flat package wrapped in brown paper. "I made something," she said, "for the empty frame, if you want it. If you don't, I'll understand." I took it with both hands. It was light, almost weightless. We walked outside together into the December dusk. Snow had started again, soft and silent. I unwrapped it under the porch light. It was a new canvas, same size as the Lost Moreau, painted in swirling cobalt, gold and crimson. But this time there was a difference. In the center, 2 small silhouettes, one tall, one short, holding hands beneath a sun and a storm cloud that had learned to share the same sky. In the bottom corner she had signed it simply, S. Harlan, 2025. For the man who taught me empty can still be beautiful. I couldn't speak. She swallowed hard. I have a studio apartment 10 minutes from your cabin. I get out for good in 3 weeks. I'm not asking to move in. I'm asking for a chance to earn the right to Sunday dinners again, one plate at a time. I looked at the painting, then at her. The snow kept falling, covering every old footprint behind us. I slipped the canvas under my arm and opened the passenger door of my truck. "Get in," I said. "It's cold." She hesitated, eyes wide. "I make a mean hot chocolate," I added, "and the frame's been empty long enough." She climbed in, buckled, and stared straight ahead as I pulled out of the prison parking lot. Neither of us spoke the whole drive home. We didn't need to. Some silences aren't empty. They're just waiting for the right colors to fill them. What if the first time you set the table for two again, you had to decide whether to use the good plates or the paper ones, because trust is heavier than china? The Sunday after her release papers were signed, I woke up at 5 a.m. I vacuumed the cabin twice, wiped counters that were already clean, and stood in the grocery aisle for 20 minutes trying to remember if she still hated peas. At 3:47 p.m., a small blue hatchback pulled into my gravel driveway. Sarah stepped out carrying one duffel bag and the wrapped canvas from the exhibition. She wore jeans, boots, and the same nervous half-smile from the prison porch. I met her halfway. No big speeches. I just took the duffel from her shoulder and said, "Welcome home, kiddo." Her eyes filled, but she blinked it away fast. Inside, the cabin smelled of roasting chicken and rosemary, Elena's recipe, the one Sarah used to beg for on birthdays. I had set the table with the everyday plates, not the wedding china. "Some things you earn back slowly," she noticed. "Thank you," she whispered. We ate in careful quiet at first, passing potatoes, talking about safe things, the weather, the new hardware store in town, how loud the owls were at night. Then she set her fork down. "I have rules," she said. "I wrote them down so I wouldn't mess this up." She pulled a folded paper from her pocket. 1, I don't ask about the money, ever. 2, I pay rent even if it's $20 a week. 3, I cook or clean every day I'm here. 4, if you need space, you say space, and I go for a walk. No questions. 5, I keep going to therapy every Tuesday. 6, if I ever lie again, even a tiny one, I leave the same day. She slid the list across the table like a peace treaty. I read it twice, then tore it in half. "Only one rule," I said. "You stay honest and you stay." She started crying then, the silent kind that shakes shoulders. I reached over and covered her hand with mine, the first time I'd touched her without fear in years. After dinner, we carried our coffee to the living room. I had left the ladder by the fireplace. Together we lifted the new painting, the one with the sun and the storm sharing the sky, and hung it in the empty oak frame that had waited exactly 365 days. It fit perfectly. We stepped back and looked. "It's better than the original," I said. She laughed through the last of her tears. "It's crooked." We adjusted it until it was straight. Later, when the fire popped and the snow tapped the windows, she asked the question I knew was coming. "Do you forgive me?" I thought of Elena's secrets, of midnight threats, of a warehouse lit by police lights, of children painting with brushes my pain had bought. I looked at my daughter, really looked, and saw the woman trying to crawl out of the girl who had hurt me. "Forgiveness isn't a moment," I said. "It's a road. We're on it. We keep walking." She nodded, accepting that the way you accept gravity. At 10 p.m. she stood, stretched, and said, "I should head to my apartment. Early shift tomorrow." I walked her to the door. On the threshold she paused. "Next Sunday?" she asked. "Next Sunday," I said, "and every Sunday after, if you want." She hugged me then, quick and fierce, the way she did when she was 7 and scared of thunderstorms. When her taillights disappeared down the snowy road, I went back inside, locked the door, and stood in front of the new painting. The two silhouettes, one tall, one short, were holding hands again. And for the first time in a long time, the house didn't feel quiet. It felt full of second chances, of slow healing, of a father and a daughter learning, one careful Sunday at a time, how to share the same sky again. What if the moment you finally believed healing was complete, Life handed you one final impossible choice. Spring arrived early that year. The cabin's porch was alive with lilacs and the sound of Sarah's laughter as she wrestled a new canvas onto the easel I'd built her for her 27th birthday. Sundays had become a ritual. She arrived at noon with groceries, we cooked together, ate too much, then painted side by side while old jazz played low. She was good, really good. Galleries in Cleveland started showing her work. A collector offered $5,000 for the Sun and Storm piece hanging above my fireplace. We both laughed and said no. Some things aren't for sale anymore. Then on a Thursday in April, a letter came from Geneva. Thick cream envelope, Swiss postmark, embossed crest I didn't recognize. Inside was a single photograph and a short note on heavy stationery. The photograph showed the original Moreau, my Moreau, hanging in a sunlit room with white walls and hardwood floors. At the bottom, someone had placed a small brass plaque, in loving memory of Elena Marie Harlan, donated anonymously to the Children's Wing Hôpital de l'Enfance, Genève. The note, written in careful English, read, "Mr. Harlan. The buyer wishes you to know the painting now lives where children recovering from long illnesses can see it every day from their beds. They call it the sky that holds both sun and storm. Many have asked for paper and colors so they can make their own versions. The buyer asks nothing in return except that you accept this photograph as proof that your loss became someone else's light. With gratitude, curator, I stood on the porch holding the picture while the wind carried the scent of lilacs around me. Sarah came up the steps with an armful of groceries and saw my face and stopped. What is it? I handed her the photograph. She read the note twice. Her eyes filled, but this time the tears were different. Quiet, wondering, almost smiling. They kept Mom's nickname for you, she whispered. We taped the photograph to the refrigerator, right in the center of all the scholarship kids' thank you drawings. That night we didn't paint. We just sat on the porch steps shoulder to shoulder, watching the stars come out one by one. After a long silence she spoke, voice small. Do you ever wish you'd kept even a little of the money for you, for us? I thought about it, really thought. Then I looked at the cabin, the garden we'd planted together, the easels side by side, the frame on the wall that finally held something we made instead of something we lost. No, I said, I kept the only part that mattered. She rested her head on my shoulder, the way she hadn't since she was small enough to fit there perfectly. A breeze moved through the lilacs, and the porch chimes sang once, soft and clear. Above us, the sky was doing what it had finally learned to do in our family, holding both sun and storm at the same time, without apology, without fear. And somewhere across an ocean, a sick child was falling asleep under colors my wife once hid, my daughter once tried to steal, and I once thought would destroy us. Instead, those colors had become the very thing that rebuilt us. I gave my daughter a painting for Christmas. She called it trash. I sold it for $412,000. And in the end, every penny bought brushes for children who needed to believe the sky could still be beautiful even after the darkest nights. The real masterpiece was never on the canvas. It was in the letting go. It was in the coming back. It was in the quiet Sundays, the crooked paintings, the lilacs, the shared sky, and the frame that finally holds something no amount of money could ever buy. A father and daughter learning slowly, carefully, perfectly how to love can be restored one honest stroke at a time. What if the story you thought was finished quietly grew bigger than the house that held it? 2 summers later, the Elena Marie Harlan Art Foundation opened its own building, a bright, airy space on the edge of town that used to be an old elementary school. We kept the chalkboards, painted the lockers cobalt and gold, and turned every classroom into a studio. The dedication day was chaos in the best way. 400 people, food trucks, kids running everywhere with paint on their elbows. The mayor gave a speech. A string quartet played. I stood in the back trying not to cry in front of the news cameras. Then Sarah took the microphone. She wore a simple blue dress the color of sunrise and looked more like her mother than ever. Today isn't about a painting that was sold, she said, voice steady. It's about what happened after it was sold. My father taught me that the real value of anything is measured by what you're willing to turn it into for someone else. She turned and looked straight at me. Dad, come up here. I shook my head, embarrassed, but the crowd started chanting my name. I walked to the stage like a man in a dream. She handed me a wide red ribbon and oversized scissors. This building is yours as much as mine. You cut it. We cut together. The doors swung open and the kids rushed in like a happy river. Later, when the sun was low and golden, Sarah pulled me into the largest studio. An entire wall had been left blank, waiting. On the floor sat a canvas bigger than any we'd ever painted, 6 feet by 8, already primed pure white. I have an idea, she said, but it's big. I want us to paint the new signature piece together, you and me, right here, where every kid who walks in will see it first. I laughed. I hadn't touched a paintbrush since high school shop class. I only know how to build frames, not fill them. That's perfect, she said. I'll paint the colors. You build the story. We started the next morning and didn't stop for 6 weeks. Every evening after the building closed, we stayed. She mixed the paint. I told her where the light should fall. She asked about the years I never talked about. Eleanor's laugh, the way she danced in the kitchen, the nights I held her while the cancer took pieces of her we could never get back. With every story, a new layer of color went on the canvas. When it was finished, we stepped back and just stared. It was the old swirling cobalt and gold, but now there was more. A small house with a porch, lilacs in bloom, 2 silhouettes on the steps, one tall, one shorter, holding hands beneath a sky that held both sun and violent, beautiful storm clouds, and still somehow looked peaceful. In the lower corner, she had painted tiny silhouettes of children, hundreds of them holding brushes up toward the sky like offerings. We titled it simply, After the Sale. On opening day for the public, we unveiled it. The room went silent for 10 full seconds, then erupted in applause and tears. A reporter asked me what the painting meant. I looked at Sarah beside me, her hand secretly finding mine. It means, I said, that sometimes the thing you lose is the exact thing the world needs you to give away. And if you're lucky, really lucky, the giving away leaves just enough room for something new to grow in its place. That night we locked the building, turned off all the lights except the one over the mural, and sat on the floor beneath it with paper cups of cheap, sparkling cider. Sarah leaned her head on my shoulder. "Still empty?" she asked, nodding toward the oak frame back at the cabin. I smiled. "Hasn't been empty since the day you brought the new one home." She was quiet a moment. "Good," she whispered, "because I'm never taking it back." Outside, fireflies blinked against the windows like tiny stars that had decided to come inside. And somewhere inside my chest, the last crack finally closed, not because the pain disappeared, but because the light had finally found every corner it needed to reach. I gave my daughter a painting for Christmas. She called it trash. I sold it for $412,000. And in the end, every dollar bought a building full of children who will never have to hide their colors, and a father and daughter who learned that the most valuable thing you can ever give someone is the space to become the person they were always meant to be. The frame on my wall is no longer empty, neither is my heart. And the story, it isn't over, it's just finally big enough to hold all of us. What if the painting you thought was finished quietly started painting you? 5 years after the dedication, the foundation had grown beyond anything we could have imagined. Satellite studios in 3 states, over 600 scholarships a year, kids flying in from orphanages in Romania and hospitals in Kenya just to spend 1 week painting under that giant mural we made together. Sarah had become the public face. Interviews, TED stages, magazine covers with her calm smile and paint-stained hands. I stayed the quiet carpenter in the background, fixing easels, building frames, and making sure the coffee was always hot. Then, on a quiet Tuesday in late autumn, a package arrived at the cabin. No return address, just my name written in careful block letters. Inside was a wooden crate the exact size of the oak frame above my fireplace. I carried it to the living room table, heart already pounding for reasons I couldn't name. When I pried the lid off, I found the original Etienne Moreau, the one sold for $412,000, the one that started every tear, every fight, every miracle, wrapped in acid-free cloth and nestled in custom foam. On top lay a single letter on the same Swiss stationery as before. Mr. Harlan, 5 years ago you gave the world a gift most people spend lifetimes too afraid to give. Today the children of the hospital have outgrown the need for the painting on their wall. They have become the painting. The buyer, who wishes to remain anonymous, forever anonymous, has instructed us to return the work to its rightful home, with one condition. Hang it beside the mural your daughter painted with you. Let every child who walks through your doors see both the original and the answer that came after it. Let them understand that lost things can come back transformed, and that art is never finished. It only changes hands until it finds the heart ready to carry it forward. There is no price tag this time. Only gratitude. With deepest respect, Curator, Hôpital de l'Enfance, Genève. I sat on the floor and cried the way a man cries when the story he thought had ended writes one final perfect line. That Saturday, Sarah came for Sunday dinner a day early, arms full of groceries and questions about why I sounded strange on the phone. I didn't say a word. I just led her to the crate. She opened it, saw the signature, the colors, the dedication to my sun and my storm, and went perfectly still. Then she did something I will remember until the day I die. She laughed, loud, free, the same laugh she had at 6 years old when I pushed her too high on the swing and she touched the sky. It came home, she whispered. Looks like it, I said. We carried it together to the foundation the next morning before dawn, just the two of us, flashlights bobbing like fireflies. We hung the original Moreau on the left side of our giant mural. On the right we hung the painting Sarah and I had made, sun, storm, silhouettes, children with brushes raised like torches. In the center, where the two paintings almost touched, we left a narrow strip of blank wall. Sarah stepped back, tilted her head and grinned. Room for the next chapter, she said. I nodded, throat too full for words. That afternoon, 600 kids poured through the doors and stopped dead in front of the new display. You could have heard a paintbrush drop. Then, one little girl, maybe 9, missing her front teeth, pointed and shouted, "Look! The sky remembered how to come home." Every child cheered. Sarah and I stood arm in arm, watching color flood the room like sunrise. Later, when the building was quiet again and the moon silvered the windows, we locked up and walked to the truck. Halfway there, she stopped, looked up at the stars, and said the sentence I'd waited half a decade to hear without knowing it. Thank you, Dad, for selling the painting, for trusting the empty space, and for letting me earn my way back into the frame. I pulled her close. Thank you for painting the part I never could. We drove home in comfortable silence, windows down, cold air rushing in like celebration. The oak frame above my cabin fireplace is empty again tonight, because the real painting isn't on canvas anymore. It's in every child who will never again believe their colors are trash. It's in the woman my daughter became when she stopped trying to sell her soul and started giving it away. And it's in this old carpenter who finally understands the masterpiece was never the swirl of cobalt and gold. It was the story we all lived after the sale. The one that keeps growing, keeps giving, keeps coming home in ways no money could ever buy. So if you ever pass through a small town in Ohio and see a bright building full of children painting fearless skies, stop in. Look at the wall where the lost masterpiece hangs beside the one we made from its ashes. And know this, I gave my daughter a painting for Christmas. She called it trash. I sold it for $412,000, and the world gave it back to us, transformed so beautifully that even the frame had to grow bigger to hold it. That, my friends, is the only happily ever after worth having. What if the ending isn't an ending at all, but the moment the story hands the brush to you? 10 years have passed since the original Moreau came home. The foundation now has 7 buildings across the country. Sarah is 37, married to a quiet sculptor who builds playgrounds out of recycled steel, mother to a fierce 5-year-old girl named Eleanor, who already paints better than both of us. I'm 62, hair gone silver, knees creaky, but still the first one in and last one out every day. The empty strip of wall between the 2 paintings, it's empty no longer. Every child who earns a full scholarship adds 1 handprint in their favorite color to that center panel. Thousands of small palms now overlap in a riot of cobalt, gold, crimson, green, purple, every shade you can imagine. A living mosaic that grows taller every year until we have to raise the ceiling just to keep giving kids room to reach. Last week we held the 10th anniversary celebration. The building was too small, so we moved it outside under tents and string lights. 2,000 people showed up. Former scholarship kids now grown, doctors, teachers, parents, even a few famous artists who started here with nothing but borrowed brushes. They asked me to speak. I tried to say no, but little Elena tugged my sleeve and whispered, "Papa, tell them the real story." So I climbed the makeshift stage with my granddaughter's sticky with icing on my hip, and I told them everything. No sugarcoating, no shame. How a wife kept a secret out of fear. How a daughter almost sold her soul for it. How a father almost lost both of them to it. How we sold the painting everyone wanted, and accidentally bought the one thing no one can price, redemption. When I finished, there wasn't a dry eye under the tents. Then Sarah joined me on stage, holding a wide, flat package wrapped in brown paper, the same way I once wrapped a Christmas gift that broke the world open. She handed it to me. "For the cabin," she said, voice thick. "One last time." I unwrapped it in front of everyone. It was a new canvas, same size as the original, but this one was different. In the center, painted with impossible detail, was the oak frame above my fireplace. Inside the frame, me, older, silver-haired, sitting on the porch steps with little Eleanor on my knee and Sarah beside us, all 3 of us laughing at something just out of sight. Behind us, the sky swirled cobalt and gold, sun and storm perfectly balanced, and filling every corner of the canvas were thousands of tiny handprints in every color a child has ever chosen, stretching beyond the edges like they were flying off into the world. In the bottom corner she had written, "To Dad, who taught me that empty space is just room for more love. Love always, Sarah and Elena." I couldn't speak. The crowd gave us the kind of quiet that roars. That night I hung the new painting in the oak frame where the story began. It fit perfectly, of course. I stood back and looked at the 3 generations laughing inside the canvas, and finally understood the last secret Elena never got to tell me. The real masterpiece was never hidden inside all of us the whole time. We just needed to be brave enough to sell the lie, survive the storm, and let the colors come home. So here's the end that isn't an end. I gave my daughter a painting for Christmas. She called it trash. I sold it for $412,000. And in return, the universe gave us back something worth infinitely more. A sky big enough for every handprint, every second chance, every child who will ever believe their colors matter. If you're listening to this and something inside you feels cracked open, good. That crack is where the light gets in. Take whatever is hurting you, whatever feels like trash today, and dare to let it go. Sell it, give it away, burn it if you have to. Because somewhere out there is a child, a stranger, a future version of you waiting to paint with the colors you release. The frame is empty right now. It always will be. It's waiting for your handprint. Thank you for walking this road with me. Like the video, turn on notifications, subscribe the channel. Your support helps us bring even more powerful stories to life. Every betrayal writes a story. Every story deserves justice.